I'm Steve Yates, Associate Director and Marketing Director at University Press of Mississippi. We appreciate you tuning in. On this video, we have a panel focused on the new book, Love Letter from Pig, My Brother's Story of Freedom Summer. I'll introduce our panelist. Julie Kabat is the author of Love Letter from Pig. Julie has toured internationally as a composer, performer, singer, and storyteller. She previously worked for over 40 years as a teaching assistant in public schools. Her brother, Luke, came to Mississippi during Freedom Summer in 1964, and her book tells his inspiring story. Andreesa Thompson was one of many students at the Meridian Freedom School where Luke taught that summer. Her younger sisters were there with her. She was born in Meridian and later relocated to Albany, New York. In Albany, she was a teacher for 9 years at the Robin Daycare Center, and after that, she worked as a teaching assistant for 10 years at the Albany County Head Start. Then she worked until retirement as a mental hygiene therapy aide at the Capital District Psychiatric Center. Andreesa returns to Mississippi each summer. Gail Falk was a 20-year-old Radcliffe College student when she went to Mississippi in late June 1964. She remained in Meridian after the summer project for several months, then returned there in 1966 as the Mississippi writer for the Southern Courier newspaper. After leaving Mississippi, she attended Yale Law School and then practiced law in West Virginia for 18 years, representing coal miners with black lung and children and adults with developmental disabilities. In 1989, she moved with her family to Vermont. In the 1960s, Black children commonly learned early to be careful and suspicious of white people in Mississippi. Luke was a volunteer in Meridian, a white guy from Rhode Island in the middle of the Black community.
And Luke wrote, "It is tragic that barriers so foolish as color differences prevent whites and Negroes from knowing and loving each other. And it is only when these barriers are destroyed that any of us can find freedom." So Luke was a volunteer in Meridian, a white guy from Rhode Island in the middle of the Black community. Andreesa, when you were growing up in Meridian, you've told me that you learned early to be careful and suspicious of white people. Before Freedom Summer, what had been your experience with white people who lived in Meridian?
Not a lot of experience as far as socialization goes, but there were some that we did work for. Now, my mom would work for them sometimes in her kitchen during the summer, and we would babysit. It was only one couple that I used to babysit for down there, and clean houses and just whatever they needed done. They would come and get us, and we would do whatever they needed done around their houses. So we did that for a while, and then we stopped because I was never comfortable working in their houses by being so young. And I would go around and babysit and clean houses and do it for a lot of my school teachers. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got a little change coming in to just go and do it for the Black people in Mississippi.
Wow. So how were the volunteers different?
They were different in the fact that they did not pose a threat the way I saw it. They were nice and friendly. At first, we thought they were too nice and too friendly because there was these white people that wanted to talk with us, wanted to be friends with us. And you had to kind of step back and look at it to see if they were trying to do some harm to us or trying to get us to get in trouble or something. And as time went on, that did not turn out to be true. And in large parts of it, though, was because of Luke. He was nice, he was really friendly, and he would talk to us, and he would actually let us touch him. And it was kind of like, wow, touching these white guys, and they're talking with us. So it was really an eye-opening and educational as well. Only beyond the books, it was educational because we got to know them and we got to understand some of them were not out to get us. So it was quite an experience.
Wow. So you said a little bit, but what was it about Luke? What did he do that helped you let down your guard and trust him?
He would sit and talk to me. And back then, I would love books. And he would take a book and ask me about it to open up the conversation. And if I didn't know that book, I would tell him, well, I've not read that book, so I don't know anything about that one. And he would explain it. And he would sit and read, and he would read to the little children. And I would stand and watch because I had my little sisters with me. And while he was sitting on the floor, they was all over him, reading books to them. And it was nice. And we went home one evening from the Freedom School, and he actually walked us home. And I was a little bit apprehensive at first to be walking down Fifth Street with the white guy and all my little sisters behind me. And it was kind of weird. But when we got to the house, he said to my mom, well, I brought them home. And she said, well, thank you. And he stood there and she invited him in. And that was the very first time in my life that a white person came into my house. And my mom offered him a seat. He sat and he talked with her and he talked with us. And he had a guy that came named Freeman Cocroft was with him. And he came and he was in the yard playing around with the kids while we were talking. And while he was talking to my mom, I just kind of like stood there and watching, like, wow, this is something. It's like that was what helped me to let down my guard around the Freedom Riders or Freedom Workers or whatever was there. And then Luke into the classroom was science. He loved science. And he taught us a lot about science. Now in school, we would learn some chemistry and the facts, but we had just the basics. And the day that he brought in a heart, I think he'd gotten it from somewhere, I think from a cow and he showed it to us. And we looked at it.